Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good morning, Ali the Shekinder. Good afternoon. Yeah, it's late in the day. It's 2:30. Okay. Now, girls, normally on Mondays we would learn Tanya. But tomorrow is BaOmer, and we do not have regular classes. So today we're doing BaOmer. Instead of doing Tanya, we're doing BaOmer. Just give me 1 second, please, and I'll be with you. Okay. Hello, everybody. Okay, it's good to see everybody's faces, as I always tell you. I really mean it. When you're stuck in a quarantine, the fact that there are other people that you can talk to that are alive is helpful. Okay, so girls, tomorrow's BaOmer. Now, 2 hours ago, I spoke to Seminary Bais, and I talked to them about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is the first of the two personalities that dominate the inyan of BaOmer. Right? BaOmer has two big names associated with it. Besides, of course, for the Mittler Rebbe and the Rebbe and all the Arizal who celebrate BaOmer, but the reasons for celebrating BaOmer are basically two. Rabbi Akiva, but in Rabbi Akiva's case, is Pasku Talmid of Milomos, that his students stopped passing away. And Rabbi Shimon, that Rabbi Shimon's Talmidim, Rabbi Shimon himself passed away. Now, of course, there's an obvious irony here. The Over Yom Tov that celebrates two tzaddikim. In one case, we're celebrating the fact that a tzaddik didn't pass away, and in the other case, we're celebrating that the tzaddik did pass away, and both of them converge on the same day. This is not a question you and I are asking. This is an old question that's been asked many times. There's a lot of answers to the question. But the fact remains, BaOmer is a Yom Tov, is a celebration for two incredibly important tzaddikim in the history of the Jewish people. Number one, Rabbi Akiva, and number two, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So it goes, I'm terrible at repeating myself. I hate repeating myself, although it's efficient from my perspective of time. I can't say the same speech 2-3 times in a row. So, Seminary Bais got my Rabbi Akiva speech. You're getting my Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai speech. Okay, that's what we're doing. If anybody's desperate to hear the other version, if you go to Facebook, it's available. It's saved on my Facebook page, the class I gave 2 hours ago to the Bais Rivka Seminary Bais girls, where I talked about Rabbi Akiva. And now I'm going to talk to you about the RaShbI, about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. What's there to say about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? What's there to say about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? I think that the essence of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is captured by the following. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was an incredibly great tzaddik. In the world of the biggest tzaddikim, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai would be outstanding. In the world of the biggest tzaddikim, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is head and shoulders above his friends. Tanoim, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is a whole nother level of tzaddik. And because he's a whole nother level of tzaddik, he's a whole nother level of Torah. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's Torah is on a higher level. Rabbi Shimon is one of those people that we say, as soon as I get up, the phone's going to stop ringing. You see that? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is one of those tzaddikim that we say that he loses arguments because he's misunderstood. You know, there's a Gemara about Rabbi Meir, that the Meir always loses arguments because La Yardu Chachamim Matzev Daite Shal Rabbi Meir, they didn't understand him. RaShbI is in the same category. But Shimon Bar Yochai is one of those tzaddikim that he loses arguments because he's misunderstood. He's Shaloi Be'erech Anshe Deira. He's on a whole nother level than anybody else in his time and in all times. He was an incredibly holy, holy, holy man. What's strange about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? Everybody seems to have a kinship with him. Everybody seems to feel like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is their buddy. And the proof is, right? If a person comes from any place in the world to America, where do you go? You go to the oil. If a person comes from any place in the world to Eretz Yisrael, where do you go? You go to the Koisel Maravi. You go to the Maros Machpelah. and you go to Miron, everybody goes to RaShbI. Everybody goes to B'Shem B'Yechai. Now, I don't know what happens like BaOmer in Eretz Yisrael because I've never been there. But a lot of my children have been there, and they've heard from many other people. Hundreds of people come to Miron on like BaOmer. They camp out sometimes for days over a huge area, and they make bonfires, and they roast meat, and they fabreng a day and a night. Hilul RaShbI, ein kleinigkeit. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai passed away. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said before he passed away, so people should be happy, and people are happy. A lot of the people who come to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and celebrate are not even from. As they get the shmur. Now, of course, you don't know who's from. There's a mice mit the Friedrich Rebbe. It's a wonderful story with the Friedrich Rebbe that I heard more than once about a lady who gave a lot of tzedakah. When she visited the Friedrich Rebbe in Montreal, and she was connected to the Lubavitchers in Montreal. When she visited the Friedrich Rebbe, she went into the Friedrich Rebbe, and the Friedrich Rebbe started to compliment her, to flatter her. But the kind of praise he gave her was like as if she's like Rochel or Leah or Sora or the Emois, like big tzaddikas. So she says, Rebbe, se nicht emes, ich bin nicht frum. She says, Rebbe, I give a lot of stuff, but I'm not frum, I don't keep kosher. And she probably knew what frum was. So the Friedrich Rebbe said to her, Tochter, that's how I heard the story, Tochter, wer weiß, wer is frum? Who knows who's frum? In other words, Friedrich Rebbe said, I'm giving you a compliment. I don't usually make mistakes. I'm not making a mistake now either. Tochter, who knows who is from? So people come to RaShbI by the hundreds of thousands, and many of them are in the category of wer weiß wer is from, who knows who's from, and they all celebrate Reb Shimon. So what's the irony? What's the dichotomy? What's the two extremes? The two extremes is here's a Jew that we have nothing in common with. If you would meet him, you wouldn't begin to understand him. The biggest tzaddikim would begin to understand him. And everyone seems to relate. It's weird. A bigger tzaddik who's involved in Kabbalah is b'chlal not involved in regular practical things, lives in a whole other world, and everybody seems to have a kinship with this man. It's funny. But it actually makes sense. This dichotomy, this irony actually makes sense. And the sense that it makes is that we don't understand smart people. When a person is smarter, we understand them less. A person is even smarter, we understand them even less. But we relate to holiness. We relate to holiness. And the holier it is, the easier a time we have to relate to it. Because every Jew has a little holiness in his neshama. We call it a pinta yid. Because of the holiness that we all relate to, when we meet somebody who's representative, who's be'emes in a maimed matzav of kedusha, we just somehow connect. That's why people related to the Rebbe. I mean, you have to stop and think. Yeah, you watch videos of people by Fabrengen jumping up and down and screaming, and the Rebbe saying to sing. The Rebbe is another world. The Rebbe's whole world is Teira and Aveda, Gmas Chasadim. The Rebbe is a person who didn't waste a split second, every second serving Hashem. And who are the people jumping up around in shul? Some of these people jumping up around in shul before the Fabrengen and after the Fabrengen don't know what to do with themselves, and yet we have a connection. Why? Because when it comes to absolute holiness, there's absolutely no limit. And because when it comes to absolute holiness, there's absolutely no limit, everybody relates. RaShbI is one of those neshamas. Everybody knows that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is their friend. Everybody knows that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's day is a good day for them. You got a problem, you go to the oil, you go to the cave in Miron, right? You all know that Rebbe said that unlike BaOmer, you're supposed to go to the scene of the RaShbI. Because Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said, two famous statements of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is, one is that I can save, Yochelni lift, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said two things. Yochelni lifted as Kela Eilam Kulim in Adin. I have the power to protect my whole generation, that nobody in my generation should be punished. And the other one is Kedaihu Rab Shimon Lismech Alav B'Sha'as Hatchak. Rab Shimon is one of those people that it's worth relying on when you find yourself in a difficult spot. Sha'as Hatchak, in a difficult time. There are two different Gemaras. I'll say them again. The first is Rab Shimon Bar Yochai said, Yochelni lifted as Kela Eilam Kulim in Adin. I can save my whole generation from tzaddas. And he said, if I'm my son, I can save my generation and all future generations. If I'm with my son and somebody else, I can save my generation, future generations, and past generations from judgment. And then the second statement of Rabbi Yochai is when the Shas Adchak, when life is hard, Kedayu Rab Shimon Lismech Allah B'Shas Adchak. Rab Shimon is one of those people you can always rely on. You can always lean on him. Why? He's such a big tzaddik. You know, a bigger tzaddik is a bigger circle, so he reaches lower. Yeah, imagine a bunch of circles. A small circle and a bigger circle, the bigger circle. The smallest circle, the lower end of the circle, is closest to the center. A bigger circle, the top of the circle is higher, but the bottom of the circle is lower. Rabbi Shimon Yochai is one of those gigantic circles that encompasses everything from the highest to the lowest. Since he's the highest on top, his embrace, his v'tachas reis elam reaches to the lowest madreges. And of course, like I said to you before, the consequence of that is Rabbi Shimon Yochai is one of those people that everybody relates to. We don't even know how to hold a Zohar. We don't understand Zohar. But Rabbi Shimon Yochai is a good guy. I can relate to him. What do you relate to? You relate to his holiness. You relate to the fact that there was so much kedusha, so much alakus in this person, that the worst yid is embraced by this. And this is what's interesting. The taka, the person who's on a higher level, seems to be able to find grace, seems to be able to find bracha, seems to be able to find hatzola and hatzlocha for the Jews on the lowest levels. And that's like BaOmer. Like BaOmer is one of those Yomim Tovim that people got together and they celebrated and they fabrenged and they connected to this incredibly great tzaddik who represents Kabbalah, Pnimiyas HaTorah, the part of Torah that nobody understands. We don't have to understand Kabbalah. We have to just have a chush, a little bit of a feel for Ruchnis Nelakus, and we have a connection of Shem Yochai. Now, what's going to happen tonight? I don't know what's happening in your quarantine, but in my quarantine, we're going to try and make a fire. Why are you going to make a fire? Say, Dominic, what does fire have to do with anything? What does fire have to do with anything? So there's a funny thing about fire. I once heard this from a smart person. I forgot from who, but it must have been a smart person. That there are 3 things that you can watch and never get bored of. There's 3 things you can watch them and never get bored of. One of them is the ocean. You can sit and watch waves for hours and somehow it's interesting. The same wave over and over again. You sit there and watch. The second is other people working. You can sit and watch other people at work. We were in yeshiva. They were building the yeshiva, building the building. So every break we came and we stood and watched people working. In an hour, they dug a hole. In 5 hours, they laid a pipe. But we watched them. We had plenty of patience. And the third is fire. You can sit and watch fire. You guys have a bivouacs. You go overnight. You sit around the fire. Every once in a while you throw in a piece and you sit and look at the fire. And somehow that's meaningful. It's entertaining. It's something. The poshet, the pshat is fire, light, fire, heat makes people happy. And b'schusif and RaShbI, we make a fire. You push it, sit around the fire, a big fire, a little fire, as long as it's a safe fire, and you enjoy the upliftedness that fire gives people, and you sit together and you sing and you fabreng and you say Advar Torah in the schus of Shem Yochai, because this man who was so holy that we have 0 in common with him, 0 in common with Shem Yochai, we all have something in common with. And that's the way it works. The biggest tzaddikim have connections to the lowest people. And forget, the smaller the tzaddik, the more uptight he is. Like I said to you before, if you have a smaller ring, so if the top of your ring is lower, the bottom of your ring is higher. You can't extend as low. RaShbI, because of such an incredible tzaddik, his extent, his circle, his ring extends to every single Jew in the world, even the biggest Rishoyim. Mit Rab Shimon hat yeder rashayches. A yid who's in a maimed matzav of doichek, that means let's say Lamaila is being judged, and they're telling him, you're a bad Jew, we don't want you. Rab Shimon can help a yid b'shas adchak, because Rab Shimon is so holy, nobody is beyond, nobody's outside the sphere, outside the ball, outside the circle of the Gedusha of Rabbi Shimon Yochai. And that's what Lag BaOmer is. We celebrate this holy, holy, holy man. Now let's talk a little bit about his life, a little bit of Rabbi Shimon's life. Number one, I have to tell you that when I was growing up and I learned Mishnayos and I learned Gemara, there's a few rabbis that you feel very bad for. And one of the rabbis you feel bad for is Rabbi Shimon, because he seems to lose every machlokes. Whenever the Chachamim argue, it's not 100% of the time, but usually, Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Meir are the worst. They always lose. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi always win. And Rabbi Elazar is someplace in the middle. But Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Meir seem to be losing every machlokes. And like I said to you earlier, part of the reason that Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Meir seem to be losing all machlokes is because Pashat people don't understand them. The Svaras, the Nigla of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was such a high madrege that he could never get others to side with him. And in Halacha, Nigla the Torah, there's a principle of Acharei Rabim Lahates, he's supposed to follow the majority. And Rabbi Shimon always finds himself in the minority. And then, of course, you have the Gemara. The Gemara says, the Romans, the Romans were called Malchus Harsha. You know, the Romans are called Malchus Harsha, even though in the Valanisim we say Chanukah. We call Yovan Malchus Harsha, and Yovan goes on Greece, not Stam Greece, but Syrian Greece. But Rome, the Richtike Malchus Harsha, the kingdom of Rishis, the kingdom that loves to spill blood, is Edom, is Rome. It's a Malchus Harsha. And the Malchus Harsha tried to conquer the world. And in Malchus Harsha's ambition to conquer the world, they killed untold millions. They did so much cruelty, not just to Yidden, but to wherever they went, they conquered and they destroyed. They killed whole civilizations of people. You know, they came to a country. This was a tactic that was introduced by Alexander Smugden. He would knock on the door and say, open the door and let us in, and we'll let everybody live. If you open the door and let him in, he'll let you live. If you resisted, they killed everybody. Every man, woman, and child. They killed everybody. This happened in many places. Rome was evil. And then Rome made these big arches and these big monuments to their many, many victories, as we all know. And Rome also built roads. Rome built aqueducts, right? Rome built systems that provided huge quantities of water so they could have these large cities with hundreds of thousands of citizens. There would be no shortage of water. And Rome built the baths that people could go and wash and be entertained. And Rome built the theaters, right? The Arterois, the Colosseum in Rome, and all these other fancy schmancy things to entertain the people. And the Tanoim were discussing it. Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Eloi said nice things about Rome. Another one of the Tanoim kept quiet. And Rabbi Shimon said, no, these are Ashoyim. They're evil, like it says in the Tanya at the end of the first Perek. Kol tivu da avden uma se'elam lagarmayu avden when a goy, a Rosha. When Malchus Harsha makes for you a road, provides you fresh water, or builds for you a bath, it's lagarmayu. He's not thinking about himself, he's thinking about you. And the Romans found out what Rabbi Shimon said. So they wanted to kill Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Shimon went and hid in a cave. Right? In other words, Shimon had a problem. He never had to say the emes. He can pilpul about whether he was right or he was wrong. But that was the way he approached it. He couldn't lie. He wasn't going to say that the Romans are nice, make the Romans feel good. And he had to hide in a cave for 12 years. For 12 years, Reb Shimon hid in a cave. The nest was he had company. Who was his company? His only son, or one of his sons, Reb Elazar ben Shimon. Reb Shimon went with Reb Shimon Bar Yochai into a cave. They lived in this cave for 12 years. During the 12 years in the cave, they didn't have mitzvahs. They didn't have tefillin, they didn't have matzah, they didn't have a lulav, they didn't have a sukkah, they didn't have a shofar, they didn't have a Megillas Esther, they had no mitzvahs. All they did was study Torah Yom V'Layla. The Chazal say that they went into the cave with one outfit, with one set of clothes. And they knew they have to be in this cave for a very, very, very long time. So they realized that the clothing was not going to last. So they took off all their clothes, and they covered themselves until their necks in sand. And that's how Reb Shimon and Reb Elazar would learn Torah day and night. Covered till their necks in sand means even sneeze. And the Rebbe says in Tanya, that they spent 12 years in the cave. The Zohar, the Rebbe says in Tanya, they could have said in 2 or 3 months. It didn't take 12 years to say there's 2 or 3 months they could have said the whole Zohar. What were they busy with? They were learning Nigla. The Alter Rebbe brings, it says in Sfarim, that there were 600,000. We have Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, 6 orders of Mishnah. They had 600 orders of Mishnah. Tafresh Sidrei Mishnah Shahayabi Ameim. Reb Shimon and his son sat and learned Nigla day and night. When they had to daven 3 times a day, they went out of the sand. They put on their clothes. They davened. They took off their clothes, went back into the sand, and they continued learning like this. They made a nest, of course, that a tree of cheruvim, that means carob, boxer, grew, and they ate cheruvim for 12 years. It's a very, very delightful food. If all of you eat it, of course, on Tu B'Shvat, we all eat cheruvim, so you will know how unbelievably delectable, how delicious fresh boxer are. And they ate 12 years, they ate cheruvim. and they had water, and that's what they had no Torah, they had no mitzvahs. They had Cheruvin and Mayim. So the Rebbe said once in a Maimer that there's a concept in Torah called Teirasa Yom Noseh. That means a Yid whose life is Torah. But most people whose life is Torah also have to work, right? A person who sits and learns Torah doesn't have anything to eat unless has a job. So you have to have what's called Torah im derech eretz. You have to have Torah, and you also have to have a job. And we find in the Gemara, it's mentioned in Tanya, also in the Geras Kedesh Chaf Vav, I guess, that in Zman Yesheni there were big Tanoim who had jobs. This one was a shoemaker, and this one was a tailor, and this one, they had other ways of making a living. Because you can't make a living from Torah. You learn Torah with derech eretz. Reb Shimon was different. Reb Shimon's Torah was his umnus. That means he learned Torah, and the Eibishter gave him parnasa b'derech nes. It's a very, very high level. It's a very, very rare level. Reb Shimon Yochai was in this high level that he learned Torah, and parnasa came from the Eibishter. However, says the Rebbe, that the Gemara says, and it's brought also in Chassidus, that a person whose business is Torah doesn't have to make up a parnasa. He doesn't have to daven either, but he has to say Kiddushim every day, Shema, and he has to work. He has to have a job. I'm sorry, he has to do mitzvahs. He has to have mitzvahs, do mitzvahs. The Rebbe said once that Shimba Yochai was in such a high madrega that not only was he potter from tefillah, he was potter from mitzvahs. The fact that Shimba Yochai for 12 or 13 years could not do a mitzvah is a raya that he didn't need mitzvahs. Shimba Yochai. Anyway, you all know the end of the story. Yeah, 12 years passed. These two men walk out of the cave. They haven't seen a human face in 12 years. They've been living in a cave, eating wonderful food. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, I am being sarcastic when I talk about how wonderful boxer tastes. It tastes like terrible. Okay? They haven't seen a soul. And they walk out into the world, and they see people sitting and doing normal things. Adam Chayresh, Adam Zereya, people were plowing their fields. People were seeding their fields. So Rabbi Shimon got very upset, and Rabbi Lazar got very upset. And they said, you instead of learning Torah, you're wasting your time with doing such silly things as making a living. So the Gemara says, wherever they went, and they were makbid, they got upset. Nasagal Satamas, the person whom they got upset at, became a pile of bones, as they state in the Gemara. They saw a person plowing and seeding, so the Eibishter sent out a voice from heaven. And he said, Hashem had told them to leave the cave after 12 years. Hashem said, I told you to leave the cave to destroy my world, go back into the cave. So they went back into the cave for another year. And then they came out after a 13th year. Now, Apisvara, if after 12 years in the cave they couldn't relate to people making a living, after 13 years in the cave, but the Gemara says that's not what happened. They came out after the 13th year, and Reb Shimon was on a higher level. How high a level was Reb Shimon on? That he was in such a holy level that he understood that Adam Cheresh, Adam Zereya, that it's possible to serve Hashem by being a farmer. And of course, the Gemara says that they were walking, and they saw a man running. Erev Shabbos, you're allowed to run, holding two hadassim, two myrtle branches, two hadassim that were used for lulav, for alminim. So he says to him, why are you running? He says, it's Shabbos soon. What are the hadassim? He says, Shabbos, I want to have many inyanim of Oynig Shabbos, things to give me pleasure from Shabbos. And one of the many things that I want you to pleasure from Shabbos is the pleasure of Beit Min Shalom, a good smell. So the Rashbi says to this man, so what do you have two? One is enough, we have to have two. So he answered, Echet Kineged Zocher and Echet Kineged Shomer. Because Shabbos has two things. The mitzvahs say it's Zocher, it's Yom Shabbos, to make Kiddush, and to remember Shabbos. And Shomer, the mitzvahs like say not to transgress Shabbos and be able on the malachas of Shabbos and so on. So Shimba Yochai said to himself, a Yid with two hadassim, two pieces of vegetation, two pieces of tzemech, is being becoming a mitzvah, is connecting to the Eibishter, and he understood that there's more ways to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu besides for learning Torah. You could be in the world, and you could make a living, and you take two hadassim, and you use them for Avodas Hashem, and you can't get to Atmos Mosein Baruch. So the Gemara says that when they came out of the cave the second time, Rabbi Lazar, his son, Rabbi Lazar Reb Shimon, was still very intolerant. He still couldn't take that people were working. So he was killing people. He saw a person working, he was backbid, they became a pile of bones. So the Gemara says, Kol mokem de mocher Rabbi Lazar, moser Reb Shimon. After they came out the second time, Rabbi Lazar would get upset, and people would die, and Reb Shimon would be, melamed chus on them, and he'd bring them back. As they said the Gemara. So they came out of the cave. Now there's another Gemara which says that they met at a Pinchas ben Yair. Now Bepashtos, this is a little bit of a controversy in the Gemara, but Bepashtos, Pinchas ben Yair was Rabbi Shimon father-in-law. In other words, the Pinchas ben Yair was Rabbi Shimon's mother's father. He was a Tana, he was a big tzaddik. For a Chazal, but his donkey, his animals, the Pinchas ben Yair's donkeys didn't want to work on Shabbos because no Shabbos you have to rest. And the Pinchas ben Yair met Rabbi Shimon and his son Rabbi Lezer. So the first thing it says is that because Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Lezer had spent 13 years in sand, their body was full of bruises, full of cuts. By sitting in the sand for all that time, their body was full of these cuts, open wounds. And they looked terrible. When the Pinchas ben Yair saw how Rabbi Shimon looked, he started to cry. And tears have salt in them, a little bit of salt. The tears from the Pinchas ben Yair would fall on the hand of Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon would scream in pain that the tears that the Pinchas ben Yair was spilling from the fact that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai looked so bad was hurting Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai because of the salt and the tears. That's one thing the Gemara says. And the other thing the Gemara says is that before Rabbi Shimon went into the cave, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai would ask a question, and Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair would give 12 answers to each kasha. After Rabbi Shimon came out of the cave, it was the other way around. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair would ask a question, and Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai would give 24 answers. I'll say it one more time. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair Pashtus was Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's father-in-law. He was older than him. So before Rabbi Shimon went into the cave, Rabbi Shimon would ask a question, and Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair would give him Yud Beis Piruki, 12 answers. After Rabbi Shimon came out of the cave, Rabbi Shimon became so much hard that the situation was reversed. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair would ask the questions, and in each question that Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair would ask, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai would give him 24 answers. This is the story of Rabbi Shimon, a very, very holy man who was not afraid to speak his mind, even if it upset the Romans, and then the Romans tried to kill him, and he had to hide in a cave. But of course, the story of Rabbi Shimon that we all know, that we koch b'chlal, and that we koch on Lag B'Omer Befrat, is the story of the Zayar. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai was the author of the Zayar, and it's brought in many Sfarim. In many Sfarim, it's brought that from Moshe Rabbeinu, Yidden had Pnimius HaTorah. From Moshe Rabbeinu and Shua ben Yun, Yidden had what you and I would call Kabbalah. What's Pnimius HaTorah? What's Kabbalah? Pnimius HaTorah and Kabbalah is called Oyer Torah, the light of the Torah, or Oyer HaTorah, or Torah Oyer. Torah, you want to understand. Above the understanding of Torah, there's the light of the Torah, or the godliness of Torah. This is the realm of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, the Eira Torah, the Getlachait, the Lukus of Torah, Pnimius HaTorah. And Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai had a following. He had Talmidim, not a lot, but he had a following. And they used to learn together Pnimius HaTorah, Seides HaTorah, and Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai revealed Kabbalah. So the way it's brought is Azoy. That until generation of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Kabbalah was for Yechidei school. Only rare people learned Kabbalah. In other words, even some of the Tanoim didn't know Kabbalah. After the generation of Shimon ben Yochai, Kabbalah was again for Yechidei school. Very few people learned Kabbalah, except very special people. And some of them we know their names. It's brought in the Shara Agdomis of the Rachav and other places. Agdom of the Shara Agdomis and other places in the Rachav and other places. During the generation by Yochai, it says in the Zayah that even little boys and little girls were studying Kabbalah. The generation of RaShbI was so uplifted by having Rabbi Shimon amongst them that even little children, kleine Kinderlach, were like big Mukubalim. In Zayah you have Maimorim from Yenuka and Yenuksa. In the Zayah you have stories of Torah spoken by a little boy and a little girl. The time of RaShbI was such an unbelievable time that even simple people were holding by inability to understand Pnimius HaTorah. But above everybody else, Rabbi Shimon had a chavra, he had a group of 10 people. And he was one of the 10 men. And they would get together and they would study Seides HaTorah. Once Rabbi Shimon summoned these other men, there was 9 plus him is 10. And it says their names. Rabbi Lazar, his son, and there was Rabbi Abba, and there was this one. And Rabbi Shimon said, I want to go into a special room, it's called an Idra, and we're going to study Pnimius HaTorah, and study Kabbalah, reveal secrets of Torah. So it says in the Mefarshim on the Zayar. The Zayar, by the way, is in Pashas Nosei. It's called Idra Rabbah in Pashas Nosei. It says in the Mefarshim. When Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai summoned these people, each one of these 10 was a different midah, or a different sfira. We need to say between all 10 of them, you had all 10 sfiras. One was Kesed, and one was Chochmah, and one was Bina, and one was Chesed, and one was Gevurah, and one was Teferes, and so on. So they went into a room, 10 men, Rabbi Shimon and 9 other people. Rabbi Shimon began to reveal Seder Satera, Kabbalah, things that he had never revealed before. And they were all enjoying it. While they were in this Idra, while they were in this room, 3 of the tzaddikim in the Idra expired. Like another Navi Upashad. 3 of the tzaddikim in the Idra passed away. RaShbI was Magal, such Seder Satera, such deep secrets. And they were such kalim, they understood the oil of the Seder Satera that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was Magaler, and the Neshama was Eila b'Sa'ora HaShamayim, and the Neshama went up to heaven. Frag the Welt Akashe, hey, but that's a bad thing. None of the Navi were punished. None of it was held against them, that they studied Seder Satera, you know, they learned Seder Satera, right? The Neshama is now, it's called an Avera that they passed away from being involved in Seder Satera. Later on, you have the Maise with the Dal Shnichas of the Pardes, before Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Akiva and Ben Dema and Ben Azai and Elisha Acher. All of a sudden, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai teaches Pnimi Satera. 3 people pass away and no one says boo. So the teretz bepashtus is that if somebody goes into the world of Pnimi Satera and the Neshama leaves the guf before his time, it's an Avera. Because every yid in this world has a shlichus, they have a mission. It's supposed to last on this earth a certain amount of time and do a certain amount of good things. If somebody hastens his own demise by engaging in Seder Satera to the extent that the Neshama leaves the guf, it's considered not a good thing. What the 3 Talmidim of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did, when their Neshamas were Eila b'Sa'ora HaShamayim, when they passed away, for Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai revealing Seder Satera, it was the end of their life. And this had the Neshama left the guf through the union of the Pnimi Satera. This is called Histalkus, girls. And I want to explain Histalkus to you just for a minute. I want to explain to you a little bit what this means, Histalkus, a little bit. The truth of the matter is, I mean, you girls learned Chumash. So you know about the death of Meisha and Aaron and Miriam. Right? Or Miriam, Aaron and Meisha. That the Gemara says, and Rashi brings it in Chumash, that Shloshtan Meisu b'Neshikin. Miriam died from a kiss. Aaron HaKohen died from a kiss. Moshe Rabbeinu died from a kiss. So it's explained in Chassidus and in Kabbalah, and also it's Seichel Enushi. Why do most people die? Most people die because the guf breaks down. The body is finite, the guf is limited, and the body gets old, and it gets used up, and it gets exhausted. At a certain point, the guf becomes so compromised. If you imagine the guf like a candle, and the neshama like a fire, when the oil goes out till the bottom of the candle, the fire goes away. When a person's physical health becomes so compromised that they're not able to hold on to the neshama leaves. So most people, when they pass away, the guf dies and the neshama goes away. By tzaddikim, there's something called histalkus. Histalkus means the guf is healthy, the guf is alive, the guf can lift on. Hashem shines a light, which is a spiritual kiss, a chassidish akush, like the story that you all know, and it raises the neshama up out of the guf and the neshama leaves. That's such misas nishikin. And be'emes is the histalkus of every tzaddik, any real tzaddik. When he or she passes away, it's not the pshat that the guf breaks down and the guf dies, it's the pshat that the neshama was eila b'sa'ara hashamayim. I remember I was a boy of 22 years old when the Rebbe Chaim Mushka passed away. When the Rebbe Chaim Mushka passed away, she passed away on Wednesday. Thursday night, the stolen Rebbe, so Gesundsein, came to the Rebbe to Menachem Olu. And the stolen Rebbe asked the Rebbe 2 questions. And I later saw that these same 2 questions the Rebbe used to ask other Gedolei Yisrael. The 2 questions that the stolen Rebbe asked the Rebbe was, number 1, how old was she? So the Rebbe said, quite emotionally, she was dem Chafhei Ode, volt bei ihr geworden, 87. This upcoming Chafhei Ode, she was turned 78 years old. And then he asked the Rebbe, from what did she pass away from? When he told us to the Rebbe became very, very emotional. He started to cry, mamish. And the Rebbe said to him, for Naninyan Pnimi. She passed away she didn't pass away because she had a medical problem. She didn't pass away because the plumbing broke down. She passed away because of Naninyan Pnimi, Naninyan Ruach and Neshama. And then the Rebbe said, Yeder Istalkus is Naninyan Pnimi. Most people, when they die, the guf dies. Tzaddikim, when they die, the Neshama departs. So if a person is nichnas lepardis, right, like the Aviyu and the Arbosh nichnas lepardis, but your time hasn't yet come. It's not your time to pass away. The person starts to study Kabbalah, and it causes him to go out of the goof. And for the neshama to be able to Sar HaShamayim is considered a big Aveda because the person is supposed to live. On the other hand, if it's the end of a person's life, and that person has a schus, that they're in the madrega that have shaykhs the pnimiyas HaTorah, when their neshama is raised up by the oid of pnimiyas HaTorah, it's an unbelievable histalkus. In other words, these Trasa Sabbath, these three tzaddikim from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's minyan, who passed away in the Idra, it was like Moshe Rabbeinu. It was mamish misas nishikin. Hashem kissed the neshama with the aid of the pnimiyas HaTorah that Rashbi was teaching, and the neshama was Eila L'mayla. This is a story. This story is not so bad. It's a story, but it's not so bad. Okay, now give me 1 second. I'm going to stand up. So I'm going to be putting you on... I'm very, very tired. So if I stand, it'll be easier for you to see me, okay? Or possible for you to see me. Okay. Okay, you can see me now, yeah? I'm falling asleep. A few years later, yeah, I told you a ma'aseh. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai got together his 10 chevre. They went into a room and they began to study Seides HaTorah, Kabbalah. And while they were in that room, 3 of them were Eila B'Sar HaShamayim. A few years after that, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai calls the remaining 7. That means 6 plus him, what's left of that original minyan. And says, let's do it again, right? You all know everybody knows, every Lubavitcher knows Kol Merabah V'Shachtel Rab Zera, right? What's the story of Kol Merabah V'Shachtel Rab Zera? That the Rabbi killed him. How did he kill him? With Shchita. Ein Shachat Elo Moshach. In other words, Rabbi was teaching Seides HaTorah. The Indian of a Neshika of a kiss. Rab Zera's neshama left the guf. The next day, Rabbi realizes what he did, so he brought him back into the guf. So he says to Rab Zera, let's do it again. So what did Rab Zera say when the Rabbi says to him, Rabbi Bar Nachman, let's do it again? He says, whoa, how do I know that Hashem is going to make another nest? In other words, I'm not ready to leave this world. I still have a shlichus. I still have work to do. And if you're going to again pull off one of those kalei nefesh situations, maybe you're not going to be able to be mamshach neshama back into the goof, and that'll be an aved. And he refuses. Rab Shimon, imagine this. Your Rebbe calls you, 6 other guys. And he says, we're going to reconvene the Idra. We're going to go back into this holy place. And we're going to learn Seides HaTorah. And he tells them straight up, because I want to pass away. Hasta Maise, RaShbI calls 6 Talmidim. The 6 Talmidim who the time before were witnesses that when you study Seides HaTorah, it could bring to an Ian of Kalei Nefesh. The Oira Leki can be so strong that it can suck the Neshama out of the goof. And they saw 3 people who actually passed away b'Pel Mamish. And RaShbI says, let's do it again. But this time, I'm the Korban. We're going to study Seides HaTorah, and the Neshama is going to go out of my goof and be Eila L'mayla. Now, you all learned Chumash, yeah? Where do you have in Chumash something like this a little bit? A little bit like this. Anybody remember Chumash Rashi? Anybody? It's in Pashas Matos. Anybody remember? Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu to make a war against Midian, right? Right? Somebody nod. Yeah, I know you're listening to me, yeah? And what does he say afterwards? After you finish with Midian, you're going to pass away. So Moshe Rabbeinu comes to the Yidden, says, Herzachayim Yidden, we're going to go fight a war with Midian, we're going to wipe out Midian, and then I'm going to die. What happened next? Anybody? Take a wild guess. Come on. What happened next? Huh? Girls. Not one person knows. I'm going to sit back down for this, okay, guys? What's going on here? Nobody knows? I'm asking, nobody knows? Hashem says to Moshe, you're going to wipe out Midian and then you're going to die. What happens next? Chavre, you learned Rashi or not? Now one person knows. This is very embarrassing. The Yidden said we're not going, that's all. Moshe Rabbeinu says, we're going to go, we're going to wipe out Midian, I'm going to pass away. So Yidden say, okay, we'll do it in 100 years. And that's why it says in Chumash, Moshe had to force them. Moshe had to force them to get Elef Lamata to fight against Midian, and then after Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. So here RaShbI calls together 6 men who were witnesses. They had seen it already happen. That if you study Seder Satera and you're in the Madrega of biggest tzaddikim, the Neshama could be Ela V'Sara HaShamayma, he says, let's do it again, but this time I'm going to leave the world. So what did they do? They said, okay. They came and they joined. It doesn't say inside that they protested. Now, it's a funny thing. Your Rebbe says to you, let's get together. We'll learn Seder Satera. My Neshama Be'el B'Sar HaShamayim. They said, okay. How do you explain that? Girls, the teretz is this. There's a number of aspects to the explanation. And one of the aspects of the explanation is they understood that with Reb Shimon Bar Yochai you can't play games. If this is what RaShbI wants, this is what RaShbI wants. Or to say it in different words, if this is what RaShbI wants, this is what the Eibishter wants. And you're going to resist Tahin, resist Taher. You can't change Seder Bereishis. If this is what's supposed to be, this is what's supposed to be. If this is what Moshe Rabbeinu wants, this is what Reb Shimon Bar Yochai wants, so this is what they're going to do. That's number one. But there's a number 2. Girls, you have to keep yourselves on mute, okay? One of you keeps interfering with me. You have to be on mute. One of the girls is not muted. Please mute yourselves. Yeah. And the second thing is like this, but I'll tell you a maaseh. As a support for this, okay? There was a Yid in Eretz Yisrael whose name was Reb Shael Brook. Chaim Shael Brook. And he knew a Yid, an old man, who used to come to Lubavitch when he was in yeshiva, who was by the Tzemach Tzedek's Levaya, some 40 years before, some 50 years before. And this Yid told him that when we went to the Tzemach Tzedek's Levaya, he said to him, the mood was so happy, it was like we're going to a chasana. Before the Levaya and during the Levaya, the people who were participating in the Levaya were in an incredibly holy state because the Tzemach Tzedek raised them up. And during those few hours, the Tkufa, after the Stalkus of the Tzemach Tzedek, as they got him ready for the Levaya, and the Levaya, all the people who were there were here. Nobody cried, nobody was sad. There was a holy upliftedness about it. Then they had the Levaya. They came back from the Levaya, and then they crashed. He says they came back from the Levaya, and we started to cry. Because during the Levaya and before the Levaya, the Tzemach Tzedek raised them to a place where they were pushing with the Tzemach Tzedek. It was a holy, happy space, because the halabas v'estadim of the guf were not ma'alim u'mastir. After the Levaya, they came back, and they realized that the Tzemach Tzedek's not coming back. He says, and he said, we started to cry. We cried so hysterically that Tzemach Tzedek's own children, who were Avelim, who were sitting shiva for the loss of their father, they came out of their room and said, please stop crying, you're making us crazy. RaShbI had Talmidim. And for a few hours, he raised them up to the Madrega of RaShbI. What's the Madrega of RaShbI? The Madrega of RaShbI is a Yid, Yeguf, no guf. The Neshama is the same. The Shimon Bar Yochai's Neshama was never shaykhis to a guf. Which is why the halacha is, when you have a yortzeit, and a person passes away and you have a yortzeit, it's a fast day. In Shulchan Aruch it's written that people fast on Yom Shemeis Be'Av V'Imei, people fast on Yom Shemeis Be'Rabbei. Someone dies, you fast. RaShbI is a Yom Tif. It's a Yom Tif. Why? The simple reason is because he said that it should be a Yom Tif. The pnimistic reason is because RaShbI is a neshama that never had a shaykhis to the guf. He was always a neshama person. The neshama never died. The neshama was holy before, the neshama was holy after. And when RaShbI comes to his Talmidim and says, let's get together in the Idra again, and we'll be Megala Seder Satera again, and my neshama will be Eila B'Sa'ara HaShamayim, I will expire. The Talmidim were, what's the word? They were possessed. They were brainwashed. They were overwhelmed. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai brought them into their world. In the world of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, a guf is not, you don't need a guf. It's only neshama. So when they went into the Idra with RaShbI, they were not thinking in terms of death. That in an hour from now, or in a day from now, we're going to be sitting in a Beis HaMedrash, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is going to be physically missing. And because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is going to be no guf, we're not going to have a shaykhis with his neshama either, Because for that period of time, they were raised up to a Maimon Matziv where they saw only Neshama. And because they saw only Neshama, all they saw was Simcha. They're watching their Rebbe be nostalgic and they're happy. They weren't acting happy. They were in a state of holiness that RaShbI had raised them to this madrega of holiness that was such an extent that there was nothing to be sad about. And the Zohar describes a whole bunch of details of how Rab Shimon passed. First there was a fire and they couldn't see him. Then the fire subsided and they could see him again. Then the fire came back and they couldn't see him a second time. The bottom line is Rab Shimon Bar Yochai passed away in the middle of saying Torah. He said the word Chaim. He didn't finish, stopped in the middle of Chaim. That was the last word he said. And the Neshama was able to say Hashemayim. And Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, in Lubavitch, we have a story like this with the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe also passed away this way. He told the Chassidim to be besimcha, and he also said Torah a whole night, and he finished with the words Kimcha Meker Chayim Achaya Chayim, and he was nostalgic because Neshama was Eila B'Sara Hashemayim, the Mittler Rebbe was. And by his Levaya, by the Mittler Rebbe's Levaya, it says, it's brought, that the Chassidim went to the Levaya singing and crying. They were singing, the Rebbe Yehesen Freilach Zayin Freilach Vetmen Zayin. The Mittler Rebbe had said, like Rab Shimon Bar Yochai said, that they should go to his Levaya Mitach Simcha, so they sang it, and they were crying. But by RaShbI, he raised up the people who were with him, his Idr, his Chavre, those few men, to a madrege where for that period of time, they didn't think of the need for a guf. So it was a happy event. You say every year by a yard side, the Neshama was having an aliyah. Rab Shimon Bar Yochai's Neshama was having an aliyah. And they were very happy for him. The fact that after the aliyah, they would find that Rab Shimon's guf was missing, was nehedar, and they would need him, and he wouldn't be there, and there'd be a gefelach avelis. During the hours of the Rab Shimon Bar Yochai's teaching Seder Satorah, and the Talmidim, these 6 men being together with him and the Idr, they were above that whole situation. So they went along with it, and then it was over, and Rab Shimon Bar Yochai was gone. And Rab Shimon Bar Yochai is buried in a cave, right? And of course, the end of the story is that many years later, Rab Shimon Bar Yochai's son, Rab Shimon, passed away. Rab Shimon's life is discussed in the Gemara. It was a very hard life. The Chachamim didn't have enough respect for him. He passed away in a very lonely state. That was Rab Shimon. The Gemara says that for many years, his wife kept him, and she wouldn't bury him. He stayed in the attic, and no one knew he passed away. People would come to the house, and they would say they have shilas. So she would say, stand by the door and ask the shilah. They would ask the shaila, and the brother of Reb Shimon, who had died 5, 6, 7 years before, would answer them. I think the Gemara says not less than 7 and not more than 13. She didn't let them bury his guf because she was afraid they wouldn't give him enough covet. Finally, the Chachamim found out that the brother of Reb Shimon had passed away years earlier. And even though before there had been some Makpeh, they didn't understand him. He was so much greater than the Anshe Day, they couldn't understand him. So they said, this is not normal. So they took his remains and they brought him to the Maida, to the cave, to be buried together with his father. And they were able to, the cave opened and they brought him in. Later they wanted to bring other people to bury also grandchildren together with Reb Shimon and Blazim B'Grei, and the cave wouldn't let them in. And the Chazal say that to enter into the cave of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, where he's buried together with his son Reb Shimon, you had to have what's called Tzarta de Ma'arta, the Tsar of the Ma'ora. They had spent 13 years in a cave when they were in the Shamas Beguf, and this was mezachech umevarer and maile them, so that they were able to have this high madrega kedusha, which separated them from all other tzaddikim, and that's why the 2 of them are buried alone. And Rabbi Reb Shimon had a son, I think, that they wanted to bury him together with everybody else in the cave, and the cave wouldn't open because these 2 tzaddikim stand in a very, very special madrega, because they're incredible Mesiras Nefesh. I want to finish the way I started. I see that some of you are very nervous that I'm going over. So if you have to go and your mom is so desperate to leave, gegen the hate, but maybe some of you can afford another 5 minutes, I'll say a nachavot. Like I said in the beginning, the whole inyan, the chiddush of Rab Shimon Bar Yochai was not he was a big tzaddik. The chiddush of Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, because he was such a big tzaddik, the simplest and the lowest of people relate to him. There's no barriers. And that's a fact. The Rebbe relates to the simplest of people. The simplest of people relate to the Rebbe. Because the biggest tzaddikim, they break all barriers. And this is why Lag BaOmer is a Yom Tov, because we relate, we have a connection to this holy Yid. We tap into that sense of holiness, and we celebrate this day. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, if you celebrate my day, you have my schus, and if you don't celebrate my day, I'm going to be upset. Fanafil HaSipur, there's a story which is brought in Sfarim, that the Rashbi, the Arizal went to Miron, to Fabreing and Lag BaOmer, and he was dancing. And suddenly they saw an old man that they did not recognize, the Talmidim of the Arizal. And the later said to Arizal, we saw an old man that you were dancing with. Who was that old man? So the Arizal said, if you saw, I will tell you. I was dancing with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Shimon Bar Yochai Pasha came into a goof, and some of the Talmidim the Arizal was able to see the Arizal dancing together with him. Okay, a Guten Yom Tov. I will see you on, I think on Monday next, right? I don't have you tomorrow. Tomorrow's no regular classes, and I don't have you on Thursday either. Okay.
אם על פי הרבה שפלות וענווה דורשת שאדם יחשוב שמישהו יותר טוב ממך, בוודאי, איך זה ביטול? הרי ביטול אין שום הרגשת עצמו.
What?
אם על פי הרבה שפלות וענווה דורשת שאדם יחשוב